Hi, my name is Brynn. That's my dad, and this is the Exhaust Note podcast. Now, this is the first episode, so I thought that before we start with the podcast, I'll give you a bit of an introduction about myself. My name is Brynn, as I just told you, and I've been a car enthusiast my entire life. When I was 2 years old, I had a white Lamborghini Gallardo Hot Wheel, and my dad brought in a magazine that had a white Lamborghini in it. And I went to my room and I got the Gallardo and I brought it out. And that was kind of when it became apparent that I like cars and can recognize them. So when I was 3, that's around when I started collecting Hot Wheels. And I have around 6,000 Hot Wheels to this day.
Everything from red lines from the 60s to the latest stuff still on the hooks. You still collect Hot Wheels.
I still collect Hot Wheels, yeah.
Yeah, so the Hot Wheels, we basically used the Hot Wheels as potty training for him. And you could say it progressed a little bit to where he is now. He has a museum at his grandparents' house, so to speak, that is lined with Hot Wheels from the 60s up to the Japan Historics, the latest run, which at the time of this recording, I think is 4 or 5 or something like that. Yeah, for sure.
I think I was either 4 or 5. It was 2015, but I got my first Forza game, Forza Horizon 2, for the Xbox 360 we had at the time. And that was really what taught me about a lot of the current cars and a lot of the not current cars. And I believe that I would not be where I am today had we not got that game.
So how many cars did that have at the time? Was it like 200 or 300 cars?
It was around 200 cars at the time.
Yeah, and so we noticed as his parents, as we'd be driving down the road, and he would see a car that looked similar to a car that we've never heard of, and he would say, "Hey, that looks like a whatever," and we had no idea what he was talking about, but we knew there was some sort of passion there for cars for sure, not just as a potty training tool at that point.
To skip forward a little bit, 2019, Scottsdale Barrett-Jackson. I was 8 at the time. That was certainly a very interesting experience for me. And I also got to sit in the 2020 Ford Mustang GT500 that was on display, which was cool. So 2020 was my first Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance. I got to experience some very cool things there as well, which included sitting in a Yenko Camaro, and I got to meet Donald Osborne, who later brought me on as a panelist in a seminar.
Yeah, that was a very cool experience. He did, I think it was 2 other younger kids. I mean, you're only 15 at the time of this recording. So he brought 2 other younger kids just to see what the future of automobiles, kind of give a snapshot there. So yeah, you've been to Barrett-Jackson. We did that whole deal. Concours d'Elegance, or Amelia Island. And at this point, you've been to 5 Amelias, 4 or 5 Amelias.
4 or 5, yeah.
And we went to 10 Tenths, which is in Concord, North Carolina. That they had a heritage, they call it, which is like a concourse. Mm-hmm. So I would say this podcast, you want to explain to the listeners what your vision at 15 of this podcast looks like.
I'm doing this podcast because at this point, I know a lot about very obscure cars, and learning about and reading about these cars and the story behind them is something that brings me a lot of joy, and I want to be able to share that with the world and not let these obscure cars be forgotten, really.
Okay, a quick example of one of those stories.
Okay, so in 1982, Lancia was required to build 200 of their new car, the 037, for the new World Rally Championship regulations, but they didn't have enough time or money, and they ended up only building 103 road cars. So when the factory inspectors came and noticed that there were only 103, the team manager told them that the other 97 were at another factory and that they could drive there and stop for lunch on the way. While they were at lunch, he had the 97 of those 103 cars put on flatbeds and driven and parked at the other factory, and he got away with it.
Yeah, so they really only built 103, and it was the old switcheroo. I think there was a movie.
There was a movie.
A movie that talked about this.
Right, yeah.
And the movie, it may have been a Hollywood part, but as they were eating lunch in the restaurant, you could see the transporter go by the window, and he was trying to like hide them from looking, because the WRC folks needed to see 200 for homologation rules. That was a really good movie. Do you remember the name of that?
Race for Glory, Audi versus Lancia.
Yeah, great older movie. But that's just an example of the story that I think you're trying to get in on this podcast, whether it be something from the 80s or whatever. And also for the viewers, what are your, I would say interest in cars in general? Like one of the interesting things that I think other folks, when you've talked to them out on the road at Barrett-Jackson or Amelia or whatever, they're interested in your wide interest instead of the narrow. You want to speak to that?
Right. I think there is a somewhat of a stereotype going against car enthusiasts my age right now of not having a very wide scope. It tends to be that we focus on the Porsche GT3 RSs and the Nissan GTRs and ignore the other cars that are oftentimes more interesting in favor of what everybody knows and what is popular at the time. And that's part of my goal of this podcast, is just to put a stop to that stereotype.
And I would say your interest goes from, the description on the podcast is actually, I think it is pretty clear, like Dusenbergs, the Diablos, or whatever. I know that's kind of cliche or whatever it is, but truly at Amelia, once you go there, you have an appreciation for all things, whether it's a Friday cruise in at the local whatever, Amelia, Barrett-Jackson, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? 2 days ago in the morning, we went to a cruise in, a charity cruise in. And then later that day, we went to a local, very rural drag race. And there were some really fast cars out there. I'm talking 185 miles an hour and an eighth of a mile.
Yeah.
And that was tremendous to watch. And this coming week, at the time of this recording, this next Saturday, we'll be at a Mercedes only event at a vineyard. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of speaks to his interest in, I would say, wide variety of automobile interest that you have. When you say?
I would say, yeah.
Well, that's the intro to where he wants to take the podcast. Some of the things you could look forward to are more like the Lancia story. Some guests are going to be also enthusiasts. It's not more of an interview as much as it is a conversation. I think you're pretty interested in how people got from Hot Wheels to where they are now, and in the interest of the automobile, not necessarily where they are now, but it's the stories to get them where they are. Like the two stories we heard Sunday, we were just walking around, or Saturday, we were just walking around literally and tell them the two stories we heard.
One story was a man who had bought a Mustang in 1989 and had had it since then. His dad helped him buy it at the time he was 16, 17 years old. And recently he had a company put a 2017 Mustang motor in it. And they had to do extensive work to the engine bay to get the engine to actually fit.
Yeah, it was a Coyote, and it was a great job. It was a really good job. But just that story, that was like a 5-minute conversation. But it was a great story for that car. And then we walked, I don't know, 100 yards, and we had another story.
There was another guy who had owned a early 50s Dodge Coronet, I believe. And his grandfather had actually taken him to preschool in it. So it had been single family since 1953. And he'd had the paint matched, like fully restored it. The interior was in fantastic condition.
Original interior.
Original
headliner from 1950 something, 2 or 3. Great. And then we were at the Heritage event in Concord at 10 Tenths, and we saw an ESO, which you want to tell them a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap it up.
So ESO Revolta was an Italian Grand Tour company in the 60s that used, for the most part, Chevrolet V8s in their cars, the small blocks. And we actually saw one there. It was the first ESO Revolta, the first ESO Revolta car. They made motorbikes and air conditioning since the 30s, but the first ESO Revolta car had 300 horsepower, hence the name IR300, and had a Chevy small block in it, 4 seats, and it was aimed at Ferrari and Maserati.
And it looks kind of like a Ferrari 250 from the 60s.
Yeah.
Really nice. The interior is beautiful and all that. So that's kind of where the podcast is going. It's going to be all over the place. It's going to be like an automobile ADHD, really. It's going to be all over the place. But yeah, we just thought it was important to get to know you before we start this trek.
So this has been the first episode of The Exhaust Note. I'm Brynn, that's my dad, and we'll see you in the next one.